What's up, Wisecrack? Helen again. Now that Henry Cavill is off to kick some ass in the new Netflix adaptation of The Witcher, will we get more Man of Steel? Who knows? But in the meantime, if you want to see what Superman would be like as a sociopath, then you can hop on over to Amazon and check out its phenomenal series, The Boys. Or as films like The Avengers ask us to imagine how rad it would be to have Cape Crusaders marauding through our cities, The Boys asks us to imagine how utterly dystopic it would be. The Boys gives us superheroes who are not only celebrities, but obscenely rich with endorsements and movie rights. And while it explores many issues like should superheroes serve in the military or how pervy would the Invisible Man be, perhaps no issue is more prevalent than domination. And no, we're not talking about the whips and gags kind of domination. Okay, there's some of that. But no, we're talking about the philosophical sense of domination, the unfair use of power against a group or individual. So sit back, strap in, and strap on your... You know what, let's just get right into it. In this Wisecrack edition on the philosophy of The Boys. And yeah, spoilers ahead. First, a quick primer. The Boys follows the journey of everyman Huey, who spends his days working at an electronics shop and living with his dad, Simon Pegg. But Huey's life is turned upside down when the world's fastest man, A-Train, literally does a hit and run on his girlfriend, leaving her in a, well... A-Train is a member of the Seven, an elite hero squad owned and operated by Vought. While Vought tries to pay Huey off, our boy instead opts for revenge. In doing so, he teams up with Billy Butcher, a not-so-ethical ex-CIA officer with a serious hatred for soups. What starts out as a corporate espionage job quickly spirals out of control. The team grows, they shove a bomb up a superhero's ass.
What did you do to me?
He stuck a lump of plastique up your bum, son.
And they eventually uncover the terrifying truth that one is not born, but rather becomes a superhero.
Samaritan's Embrace, led by Ezekiel, but bankrolled by Vought, has been shipping Compound V to 53 hospitals across the country since 1971 and gift wrapping it as polio vaccine.
Are you telling me that God's not reaching up the butts of American girls and blessing babies?
Unfortunately, this information isn't enough to bring down the company, especially in light of the wave of supervillain terrorism that's spreading across the globe. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty, we have to lay some ground rules for what domination, philosophically speaking, entails. Now, there's a lot of definitions from a lot of different philosophers and schools of thought, but for this episode, we're going to talk about philosopher Christoph McCammon's blanket definition. As he argues, there are roughly 5 central traits that characterize domination, and you can see each tenet rear its ugly head throughout season 1 of The Boys. Number 1. Domination is a kind of power exerted over people. It can be physical, like the big kid wailing on the scrawny kid in the playground, or it can be social, like losing your job if you snitch on your coworker for spying on you in the bathroom.
Translucent, you're a damn pervert.
Or if you say you don't like The Mandalorian. Number 2. Domination involves an imbalance of power. In fact, the word domination actually comes from the Latin word dominus. And while the particular Latin phrasing might bring to mind the blood and boobs of the star show Spartacus, it actually means master, as in a master-slave relationship. Obviously, a big source of an imbalance of power could arise from literally shooting death rays out of your eyes, or even just being able to pull enough strings to let a washed-up super see his estranged daughter. Number 3. Domination has many forms. You don't have to be beating the stuffing out of someone to dominate them. Simply abusing their trust and making them believe a lie is enough. Not unlike how Vought's lead scientist manipulated Homelander by telling him his son was dead. Number 4. Domination is, in some sense, arbitrary or unconstrained. It's mostly up to the dominating party to decide how and when to use their powers, no matter how ridiculous. You know when a king literally kills the messenger just because he's pissed at the bad news? Yeah, that's domination. Or when Homelander goes against protocol to kill a sniper who posed no threat to him, also domination.
You know the drill. He shot at us first.
And finally, number 5. Domination is in some way morally unjust or socially illegitimate. In other words, domination just feels wrong, as if the moral or legal rights of the dominated are somehow trampled. Domination goes in every direction in The Boys. Characters dominate other characters, from basic illegal imprisonment to gross abuse of power to kidnapping your child. There's also the recurring joke of animal domination. Since the Deep can communicate with sea life, he is admittedly distressed by the lobster tank at the grocery store, or the imprisonment of his dolphin comrades. And sure, we could continue about all the people wronged by soups, but what's really striking about the show is its focus on systems of domination, rather than just individual acts. That is, the show frames how domination occurs in a larger framework of 2 particular systems: hero worship and capitalism. Importantly, in both instances, our victims on some level accept this domination. It's called, in philosophy speak, socially legitimate domination. And yeah, I know that sounds a bit like an oxymoron, since by our own definition, domination is socially illegitimate. So let me explain. Socially legitimate domination is still domination. It's just one that we tacitly accept, whether through our laws, culture, or just our collective shrugs. When Nestle negotiates rights to bottle water from the government while everyone around them is in dire need of water, that's socially legitimate domination. As philosopher Michael Thompson puts it, the norms, institutions, and values of the community shape the rationality of subjects to accept forms of power and social relations and collective goals as legitimate forms of authority. In simpler terms, what makes domination socially legitimate is the fact that society provides some baked-in justification for it. Socially legitimate domination is power under color of right, one that victims internalize as legitimate because society tells them so. It's the reason why that, despite there being a whole support group for victims of superheroes, they still manage to idolize their dominators.
Did it ever occur to you that they split your spine or broke your dick just for a laugh? Where's your fucking rage?
So how do socially legitimate systems dominate in the boys? Let's start with Wisecrack's favorite dead horse, capitalism. While there is a lot of evil shit going on in the boys, perhaps nothing preoccupies the show like the corrupting influence of money. Superheroes are not exactly upholders of virtue and justice, but costumed influencers quibbling over revenue and royalties.
We've all got, what, 4 points each?
The f***? You got 4 points?
Their services are sold to cities to the tunes of millions of dollars.
Well, we're thinking about making a move.
How much?
300 million a year.
And they make just as much in lucrative movie and merch deals.
Our latest film, G-Men World War, just grossed shy of $1.7 billion worldwide.
In chasing their bottom line, superheroes blur the line between person and product. As a result, even our heroes find themselves being dominated, forced to throw away their values and even their loved ones.
Hey Train, how you celebrating tonight? Any special girl?
Well, you know me. I'm always in the game, but I'm too fast to catch.
Starlight is chastised for doing a plainclothes beatdown of some would-be rapists, until popular sentiment shifts, allowing Vought to plaster over Starlight's own values with a rebrand that sells sex under a feminist label.
It's totally you. It's bold, it's brave, it's feminist.
How is that feminist?
Empowering. It says you're confident in your own skin and you're not afraid to show it.
Most importantly, it tells the story of your transformation, of what you're going through.
This hits on a few of the facets of domination. Power exerted over Starlight, who must shut up and play nice? Check. An imbalance of power between her insanely rich employers and her? Check. A company that is unconstrained in their power because they are literally in the business of saving the world? Check. Remember how we described socially legitimate domination as power under color of right? The PR employees couching their arguments in feminist terms is exactly that. An abuse of power cloaked under the guise of being #woke. Of course, when Starlight tries to push back, the capitalist machine then drops the pretense of benevolence. Either get with it or get out.
It's my body. I have the right to choose how much of it I show. That is true. You do. You just won't be doing it in the 7. Unless it is wrapped in that.
What Starlight experiences, however, is far from unique. The boys takes time to explore how domination doesn't just affect some permanent underclass of victims, but even those who go on to dominate others. This is because, in many cases, people have accepted and internalized the status quo as inevitable and socially legitimate. Take A-Train, the fastest man alive who also murdered Huey's girlfriend while smuggling drugs. His whole life is dedicated to maintaining his brand and his spot on the 7. He's unable to disclose his relationship to a fellow superhero simply because it would be bad for his public image, and thus bad for business. Maintaining these public-facing personas also happens to be their one weakness, as Billy Butcher explains.
You're a smart lad, but you still ain't twigged to the one weakness they all got. Their reputations.
But A-Train doesn't just find himself living a double life. He also finds himself forced to make some pretty awful decisions, even by his low standards. For starters, he chooses to inject himself with superhero steroids, lest he lose his place on the 7 and his lucrative endorsements.
You know what Stillwell told me? If I don't win, I'm out.
But if a life of drugs wasn't bad enough, he also decides to dabble in murder, killing Popclaw to keep his involvement with Compound V a secret. Importantly, A-Train views girlfriend murder as the only possibility available to him. In his words, it wasn't his fault.
I did, but it was your fault.
In believing that he has no choice in the matter, A-Train is experiencing what philosopher Michael Thompson would call constitutive domination. The abused are unwilling to contest their status because they accept the system that creates it. In one of the show's more transparent moments, the psychotic Superman says this.
They're just people. But they snap their fingers and we jump. Why? Why do we do that?
Because they sign our checks.
But there are more subtle ways capitalism forces everyone and everything to bend the knee in the boys. The best example is Vought's campaign to integrate superheroes directly into the US Army's chain of command, thereby securing a lucrative federal contract. In Vought's quest to get Congress's approval, it goes beyond the typical corporate schmoozing. Vought's most important VP, Madeleine Stilwell, goes so far as to blackmail a lead senator with a sex tape. In another instance, Vought actually deploys Homelander and Maeve to stop a hijacking, all without the government's authorization. Even after Captain Sociopath fries the cockpit and dooms everyone to a watery grave, Vought is able to cover up their involvement and still pitch their case.
We arrived 3 minutes after the plane went down. Why? Because we're not in the chain of command.
In both instances, Vought is able to act outside of both the law of the land and the law of public opinion, unduly manipulating US policy. It's socially legitimate domination, not just upon the voters, but the government institutions themselves. In exercising such arbitrary power over the government and its people, Vought brings to life President Eisenhower's infamous warning about the military-industrial complex. Eisenhower, the 5-star general in command of Allied forces in World War II, warned in his farewell address of an arms industry that could one day warp US policies for its own purposes. He said, "In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes." It seems then that Vought is the epitome of the dreaded military-industrial complex. In its quest for profits, Vought and Homelander literally create war for the purpose of selling peace. As Homelander explains, he's created a superpowered terrorist to enable a superpowered military.
Did it ever occur to you that a suit terrorist showing up exactly when we needed him to was a pretty incredible coincidence? It's almost like someone planned it. Me. I made him.
Here the show draws on real life, where governments often fabricate threats to justify their own agenda. But in the face of supervillain terrorists, it's easy to forget that sometimes the threat comes from the heroes themselves. Caught in the paradoxical belief that an arms race is the only way to be safe, it's no wonder the US has to bend to Vought's demands. Again, they've got no choice.
Frankly, it doesn't even matter how the enemy got the Compound V. What matters is they've got it. It is a whole new world now. And there is only one company that has the product to fight back. My company. My product.
But while money might explain how Vought manages to make superheroes and politicians alike do its bidding, it doesn't really explain how it gets society at large to go along with it. After all, there are plenty of billion-dollar corporations that wouldn't be able to pay people to like them. Facebook. So what gives? Well, we think it comes down to hero worship. Throughout the entire first season, we're continually reminded how special heroes are. They're afforded special legal protection, enjoy unparalleled fame, and get to attend some pretty cool parties too. In the words of superhero come prophet Ezekiel, superheroes are God's gift to America.
Why were we chosen? Because of the Lord. Because we were born with His power, because we believe.
Of course, you don't get to be special unless everyone else is ordinary. Or, as the wise Captain Psycho once said,
"We're a different f***ing breed. We shine with the golden light of Providence, but you've been helping these mud people to go against us."
No. It's little surprise then that this culture of hero worship inevitably crushes our fellow mud people. Huey, for example, has no legal recourse after A-Train kills his girlfriend. And even worse, his dad doesn't even understand what he's upset about.
Thought Robin's service was nice.
Similarly, a whole AA-style support group exists for casualties of superhero antics, except all its members are so indoctrinated in a culture of hero worship that they make excuses for the people that harmed them.
As you can imagine, it snapped off. The crazy thing is, I still miss her. It's like, that's the cost of a mortal like me for being with a god like her.
According to philosopher Christopher LeBron, this cultural belief system is wrapped up in what he calls justifying myths, or the socially accepted lies that dominators use to hide their abuses of power. After all, it's a lot easier to internalize your own domination if you believe it's at the hands of some divinely anointed superheroes. Interestingly, though, the boys seems to support the idea that if we attack these justifying myths, we might actually stop the domination. Specifically, we see this interplay with the character Starlight. Originally, Starlight believed that she was chosen by God to save people. But ever since she joined the Seven, that seemed less and less true. Her crime work was scripted, and most of her time was spent doing PR tours and photo shoots, until a religious superhero rally made her question that myth.
Every single word that I say up here, I'm reading from a script. I didn't write any of these words. I don't even know if I believe in them.
And when Huey deals a death blow to that myth, telling Starlight the truth of how superheroes are made, Starlight comes out a better person. She's not scared to fight back against Vought and rescues Huey and the boys in the process. Why? Because in place of that legitimizing myth that enabled abuses of power, Starlight is able to find her own moral compass.
Huey, go! Or else you'll get caught.
So, what do you think, Wisecrack? Is the Monopoly Man really dominating us and we're all just going along so we can make a buck? Or are there other, more visible forms of domination we're ignoring? And if we call out this domination, if we break from the myth of thinking it's okay, will it really change anything? Well, hit us up in the comments and let us know what you think. And before you go, I want to give one last shout out to Upstart. Upstart goes beyond traditional lenders to give you a smarter interest rate. Free yourself from the burden of high interest credit card debt today by checking your rate at upstart.com/wisecrack. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.